Hello, scholars! My name is Dr. Karis Dillon, and the goal of this channel is to make academic subjects easier to understand. In the last video, World War II, Part 3, we talked about America's involvement in the war and the movements on the home front. In this video, World War II, Part 4, we're going to look at D-Day and how the war came to an end in both Europe and the Pacific. The Allies waited a long time before they finally decided to begin a second front on June 6, 1944. Eisenhower knew he would surprise Hitler by attacking via the Normandy Peninsula, which had white chalk cliffs that would need to be scaled in order for Allied troops to take the region. The reason why Eisenhower wanted to attack this beachhead was because there were fewer German fortifications there. Allied planes did bomb the area for about 6 weeks before the invasion of Normandy began. The original date for D-Day was June 5th, but bad weather kept it from happening until the next day, June 6th. When the sun began to appear on the horizon, British, Canadian, and American troops came ashore of 5 different beaches along 50 miles of French land. The mission was called Operation Overlord. Over 5,000 landing craft and ships left England and headed for France that morning, and over 10,000 planes provided cover. The Allied forces took heavy resistance at Omaha Beach and lighter opposition at Juno, Gold, Sword, and Utah beaches. There were 2,000 American soldiers killed just at Omaha Beach. It is estimated that by the end of June 6, there were more than 4,000 Allied lives lost in one single day. With 5 days, each of the beaches were secured by the Allies. Hitler and his military leaders were convinced this invasion was just a trick and that the real invasion would be coming near the Seine River. The Germans didn't send troops in to fight back against the Allies, but instead sent for reinforcements, which took quite some time. Allied planes continued to bomb various bridges and main roads, which forced Germans to go around various routes they had originally planned. The Allies pushed forward and fought through the area of Normandy. On July 25th, General Bradley and his artillery smashed through the German military at St. Lo, allowing General Patton and his Third Army to move their tanks across the French rural lands, eventually liberating Paris by the end of August of 1944. The next goal of the Allies was to enter Germany and reach the Soviet soldiers. When the British, Canadian, and American soldiers made it to the Rhine River by September, they were forced to stop for 3 months because they lacked supply and gas for their military vehicles. Hitler figured this out and took advantage of their lack of movement. German leaders figured out the weakest point in the Allied lines, which was at the Ardenne forest, and attacked. If they busted through the Allies, it would separate 1/3 of the Allied forces from each other. As the Germans pushed forward, it created a huge bulge in the line of the Allied soldiers. Allied planes were able to hold back the large German forces at Bastion in Belgium until Allied reinforcements arrived. Eisenhower had to commit all of his reserves to the Battle of the Bulge, which kept Allied forces from entering Germany. As the Allies began to push back, Russian soldiers fiercely pushed across the Oder River toward the capital of Berlin in Germany. General Bradley and his troops followed retreating German soldiers and found a bridge that was still standing, which helped Allied soldiers to cross the Rhine River on March 7th. The Allies fanned out once in Germany and captured various towns and industries and reached Nazi death camps, concentration camps. There are testimonies written by Allied soldiers as they neared barbed wire fences and saw standing skeletons staring back at them behind these wired walls. If you haven't read these testimonies, please do. They're absolutely riveting. Remember, too, we only had radios at this point, so many members of the Allied nations, including America, didn't always know about these concentration camps. Remember, too, we only had radios at this point, so many members of the Allied nations and soldiers didn't even know that these concentration camps existed. Those survivors of concentration camps also have just absolutely riveting descriptions of seeing Allied soldiers approaching them. Let me also state that many Germans did not agree with these concentration camps, even if they knew about them, but they also had to be very careful not to speak out about them or against them at the time. Remember, you showed any opposition to the government, you could be executed or put into those concentration camps as well. The British, Canadians, and American soldiers finally met the Russians at the Elbe in the later part of April. The Red Army, or the Russian army, had already made it to Berlin, and the story that exists is that Adolf Hitler committed suicide on April 30th. Now, let me say there's evidence that Hitler actually escaped Germany and lived out the rest of his life somewhere in South America, and historians and researchers are still looking for evidence of this, and with the use of DNA, it may be possible to prove that Hitler did not commit suicide, but historians and researchers are still looking for the truth. On May 7, 1945, Germany unconditionally surrendered to the Allied forces. Russia definitely spent more time and inflicted more damage to Hitler than American forces did. In the later months of 1943, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin met at Tehran, Iran, where they attended the Big Three Conference. Stalin told Roosevelt and Churchill at this convention that he would still remain in the war to fight against the Japanese. The three leaders would meet again at the Yelta conference in 1945. Stalin definitely came with an agenda in mind and demanded to gain the spoils of war, including Poland and the Balkans. President Roosevelt allowed for Manchuria to go to Russia, but he pushed hard for the areas in the Pacific to be under American control. It was obvious that when the Yelta conference ended, Russia was definitely the victor of this meeting. With each of these meetings, President Roosevelt's health continued to decline. He'd been ill for a while with heart issues, and the stress definitely wasn't helping him to sustain life. FDR decided to take a vacation in April 1945 and headed for Georgia to Warm Springs. But for whatever reason, he had decided to sit for a portrait of himself and started to feel a bad headache coming on. He sat up and began to complain about the headache, and then slumped over and passed away. On April 12, 1945, the U.S. lost the four-term president that had helped America survive the Great Depression and a Second World War. His vice president, Harry Truman, had no idea what lay ahead for him. Even though the war in Europe was over, the Allies still needed to finish the war in the Pacific. It was estimated that the war in the Pacific would take another year and a half to finish. Harry Truman, now President of the United States, didn't know about the Manhattan Project until he officially became president. He had no idea that in 1939 the U.S. government put $2 billion toward creating an atomic bomb that used plutonium and uranium, which were extremely radioactive. Scientists from all over the nation worked hard to make this plan a reality. It was on July 16, 1945, in a remote desert in New Mexico that the U.S. government tested its first atomic bomb. When the bomb went off, it created what became known as a mushroom cloud that almost instantly climbed 40,000 feet into the sky. It also left an enormous crater in the desert floor. Truman didn't seem to hesitate when he heard about the bomb and how it would save thousands of American lives if the war continued for another year or two. Truman didn't seem to hesitate when he heard about the bomb and how it would save thousands of lives to stop the war instead of continuing for another year or two. He ordered a bomb to be dropped using a B-29 bomber, which was nicknamed the Enola Gay after the pilot's mother, whose name was Enola Gay Tibbets. The pilot's name was Colonel Paul Tibbets, and the bomb's name was Little Boy, and its target was Hiroshima. On August 6, 1945, Colonel Tibbets and Robert E. Lewis dropped the first atomic bomb, which decimated almost all of Hiroshima, essentially 4 square miles of the city. The bomb instantly killed 60,000 people. 3 days later, the U.S. dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki. Luckily, the Emperor of Japan pushed his ministers to surrender unconditionally to the Allies on August 14, 1945. The U.S. didn't have any more atomic bombs they could use against Japan, and everyone really wanted this war to be over. Within 3 weeks, the Japanese signed an agreement on the battleship Missouri in Tokyo Bay, which brought World War II to a close. Some historians believe that President Truman dropped the bomb to finish World War II, but that others believe he wanted to do it to show the Soviet Union that the US had an ultimate weapon if they needed it. Unfortunately, by the US dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan, this would bring about a post-war arms race between the US and the Soviet Union. This post-war arms race ended up being known as the Cold War, which is the subject of our next video. I hope you enjoyed these videos about World War II. I realized I didn't cover everything from the war. I could probably spend the rest of my life covering this topic, but we've got to move on. So if you like the video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe. I totally appreciate all my subscribers and can't thank you enough. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk with you soon.